Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking on a specific mission, really diving into some source material that's all about helping you study company law.
That's right.
We're looking at a module guide, and this one comes from the University of London. And just to be clear up front, as the document itself states, these materials are provided for students for educational purposes. So this deep dive is purely for educational use.
Exactly. And this guide, it's really meant to be your central hub for studying company law. It kind of lays out a roadmap for building the knowledge and skills you need.
Oh.
So what we want to do today is unpack how this guide suggests you tackle the subject, systematically, help you get the most out of it.
Right. Now, company law, maybe it sounds a bit, well, dry.
Some people might think so initially, yeah.
But the source pushes back on that straight away. It says company law deals with hugely important questions and governs these crucial institutions. And the reason it's so crucial, as the guide points out, is that most economic activity, well, it happens through companies. Developed economies are basically corporate economies.
Yeah, absolutely. It touches everything, society, people's lives. So figuring out how to study it effectively, using the resources like this guide, that's incredibly valuable.
Okay.
The guide gives you the blueprint, really, and we'll walk you through that blueprint now.
Okay, let's unpack this blueprint then. The guide doesn't hang about. It jumps right into how you should approach studying. So for someone starting out, what's the basic strategy?
Well, it suggests a very structured approach, sequential. You start with the guide itself for each topic.
Okay. So the guide first.
Yeah, think of it as your map. It gives you the structure, the key points, where to focus for that section.
So it's not just background reading. It's the starting point for each topic, the overview.
Precisely. Then, from the guide, you move to what it calls the core reading. And this is flagged as essential. You really have to do this bit.
Essential. And does it name a specific text?
It does. It specifies Dignam and Lowry company law as the primary core text.
Dignam and Lowry. Got it.
It mentions the 12th edition, but it also says, helpfully, that you can use earlier editions. You just need to be good with the contents page and the index to find the right sections for each topic.
Okay, that's useful. So Dignam and Lowry is the foundation, the non-negotiable part.
That's the one. Guide first, then Dignam and Lowry for the core substance.
Right. And after that essential reading, what's next?
Then comes the further reading. The guide describes this as strongly desirable for those who want to do well.
Strongly desirable. So this is where you add layers, deepen the understanding.
Exactly. This is about building depth, exploring different takes, going beyond just that one core text.
Now, this is where I thought it got really interesting. The guide doesn't just give you a list of books, does it? It explains why you might read them.
Yes, it does. It connects specific books to specific needs or angles on the subject. It's quite practical.
So what are some examples?
Okay, well, it mentions Davies, Worthington, and Hare, which people often just call Gower.
Ah, yes, Gower. Heard of that one.
It's described as very comprehensive, very authoritative. The guide suggests you turn to Gower if you're really wrestling with a point from the core reading, from Dignam and Lowry.
So Gower is like your deep dive reference for the trickier bits.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's Reisberg and Donovan. That's the current version of what used to be Pettit, Lowry, and Reisberg's company law.
Okay. And what's its specialty?
The guide highlights its usefulness for understanding how company law connects with capital markets and securities regulation, how companies raise money, listings, that sort of thing.
Right, linking the law to the financial world. Makes sense.
Definitely. Then it also points to texts like Worthington and Agnew, that's part of the Seeley and Worthington series, and also Kershaw's company law in context.
And what's the focus there?
These ones are recommended because they really try to place company law in its wider context, economic, business, social. The source says this makes the technical stuff, the statutes and cases, feel more accessible and relevant.
So it's about understanding the why and the how in the real world, not just the what's. That seems super important for actually getting it.
It really is crucial, and it doesn't stop at textbooks. The guide also suggests looking at some significant theoretical books, maybe ones you'd find in a library.
Theoretical stuff, like what?
It names 3. Parkinson's Corporate Power and Responsibility, Sheffen's Company Law, Theory, Structure and Operation, and Dignam and Galanis, The Globalization of Corporate Governance.
Okay, those sound like they tackled the bigger picture ideas. Does it say anything specific about them?
Yeah, it links Parkinson, for instance, to the whole stakeholder debate.
Stakeholders, meaning not just shareholders, but employees, the community, etc.
Exactly that idea. And it notes Parkinson's work actually influenced the modern company law review, which we'll probably talk about.
Right, so understanding that debate helps understand the policy behind the current law, like the Companies Act 2006.
Precisely. And it links Sheffens to the company law and economics school.
Law and economics. So looking at efficiency, market impacts.
Yeah, that kind of perspective. How do the rules affect economic behavior? It's an influential way of thinking about company law.
So the guide is really telling you, look, studying this isn't just learning rules off by heart. You need to engage with these different ways of thinking about companies.
Absolutely. And you need to engage because, and this is a really critical point the source makes, company law is a dynamic subject.
Dynamic, yeah, I saw that. It says it's often in the news and constantly subject to reform.
Exactly. It's not static.
Yeah.
The prime example given is that big modern company law review that started after 1997.
Right. That wasn't just minor changes, was it?
No, not at all. It was a massive rethink.
Huh.
And it led directly to the huge law we have now, the Companies Act 2006.
The Companies Act 2006. That's the big one. But the guide implies things didn't just stop in 2006.
Definitely not. Reform, debate, it's ongoing. Happened a lot, especially after the financial crisis in 2008. And it continues. The law keeps evolving.
So if it keeps changing, how does the guide suggest you stay current? You can't just rely on the textbook, right?
Right, you need to look beyond. It suggests reading the business pages of newspapers, seeing the law in action, basically.
Okay, practical stuff. What else?
And also keeping up with academic legal journals, and importantly, the specific law reports for company cases.
Journals and reports. Can you give some examples mentioned?
Sure. For journals, it lists big names like the Modern Law Review, MLR, Oxford Journal of Legal Studies, OJLS, the CLJ Cambridge Law Journal, places where academics debate the law,
Right.
and also more specialized ones like the Company Lawyer or the Journal of Corporate Law Studies.
So that's the academic debate and commentary side. What about the actual cases?
For cases, you need the law reports. The guide specifically mentions British company law cases, or BCC, and Butterworth's company law cases, BCLC.
BCC and BCLC. So that's where you find the actual court judgments.
That's where you see how judges interpret and apply the statutes and the common law principles. You absolutely need to read key cases.
And I guess online databases make this easier now.
Oh, hugely. It mentions Westlaw and Lexis, plus essential tools for accessing statutes, cases, articles, everything really. Staying current isn't just a good idea. The guide presents it as fundamental.
Okay, so we have the reading strategy, the need to stay current.
Yeah.
What about actually learning it?
Yeah.
Making it stick? Does the guide offer tools for that?
Yes, absolutely. It's not just about passive reading. There are built-in tools for active learning.
Like what?
Well, it includes activities. These are embedded in the guide chapters and online.
Activities. What are they for?
They're designed, as the guide says, to help you digest and review, test your understanding, develop skills, and kind of reflect on the material.
Okay.
And crucially, it advises you to actually do the activities before you look at any feedback or answers provided.
Right. Don't cheat yourself. Use the activity to actually test if you've got it.
Exactly. It's part of the learning process. Then there are also sample examination questions at the end of each chapter.
Ah, practice questions.
Yeah. And the instruction is clear. Try these after you've done the reading and the activities for that topic. It's about applying your knowledge in an exam-like way.
So testing yourself as you go along is baked into the method. And it mentions reflect and review sections, too.
Those are there to help you track your own progress, see how you're doing.
Okay, so given this structure guide, core text, further reading, activities, sample questions, how should you actually move through the material? Can you just dip in and out?
No, the guide is very firm on this. It strongly advises going through it sequentially, chapter by chapter, in order.
Sequentially. Why is that so important?
Because, as it explains, each chapter builds up your knowledge. And crucially, later chapters presume you have covered and understood the earlier ones.
Makes sense.
If you try to jump ahead, you'll likely miss foundational concepts you need for the more complex stuff later on.
Like building blocks, you need the bottom ones first.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating linked to this is the emphasis on seeing how all the different topics interlink.
Interlink, how they connect.
Yes. It says this is especially important in company law, maybe even more so than in other legal subjects. You can't just learn topics in isolation.
Okay. How does it suggest thinking about that?
It uses this great analogy. It says the topics are like parts of a machine that do or should work together.
Ah, like parts of a machine. I like that.
Yeah. So, understanding, say, director's duties,
Hmm.
you need to see how that connects to shareholder remedies if things go wrong, or how it relates to insolvency later on. It's about seeing the whole system.
That holistic view, seeing the whole machine,
Yeah,
that seems vital for really mastering it, not just memorizing bits.
absolutely. For exams and just for understanding it properly.
And the guide also points out that you're not necessarily starting completely from scratch, right?
Mhm.
You bring some knowledge with you.
Yes, it reminds you that you've likely already met some key concepts in other law subjects. It specifically flags up equitable doctrines.
Like fiduciary duties.
Exactly. Fiduciary duties are a prime example. They're absolutely central to company law, especially concerning directors,
And what else?
and the law of tort as well. Things like negligence. Company law often borrows from or interacts with these established areas.
So you need to draw on that prior learning and see how it's applied, maybe slightly differently in the company context.
Precisely. Don't forget those building blocks.
Okay, let's shift slightly towards the end goal for many studying this exams. What does the guide say about practical exam preparation? Resources.
Well, it suggests that having a statute book is a good addition to your personal library, both for studying and potentially for the exam itself.
A statute book. Does it recommend a specific one?
It names Blackstone's statutes on company law as a good option.
Blackstone's statutes. And the crucial question, can you take it into the exam?
The guide says you are currently allowed to use this book in the examination.
Currently allowed, okay.
Yes, but, and this is really stressed, it's in bold in my mind, you absolutely must check the regulations for up-to-date details.
Right. Because rules can change.
Exactly. Year to year, the rules on permitted materials can change. So you cannot rely on what the guide says from when it was published. You have to check the official current regulations for your specific exam sitting. That is non-negotiable.
Okay, message received loud and clear. Check the regulations. Vital advice.
Absolutely vital. And it even gives detail on marking up the statute book if it is allowed.
Oh, what does it say?
It says underlining or highlighting text is permitted,
Okay.
but no writing notes in the margins, no attaching sticky notes or anything like that, just highlighting or underlining. Again, check the regs, but be aware of these kinds of rules.
Got it. So, pulling this all together, tackling company law effectively, according to this guide, isn't just rote learning. It's a whole system.
It really is.
You start with a guide for structure, build the core knowledge with Dignam and Lowry, add layers and context with further reading like Gower or Reisberg and Donovan. You actively test yourself using the activities and sample questions. And all the while, you're looking for how the topics interlink, like that machine analogy.
And remembering it's dynamic, it changes. You need to be aware of things like the Modern Company Law Review's impact and the Massive Companies Act 2006.
Right, and keeping up with news, journals, and those key case reports series BCC, BCLC.
And drawing on those fundamentals from other areas, like fiduciary duties from equity and tort law, they're woven right through it.
It sounds challenging, but also like a really crucial area of law sitting right at the heart of the economy.
It is. And this structured approach from the guide is designed to help you navigate that complexity, build your understanding step by step, and hopefully feel prepared, not overwhelmed.
And one last time for emphasis, when exam time approaches, check the regulations for permitted materials.
Couldn't say it enough. So, hopefully, this deep dive into how to study company law using these University of London materials gives you a really strong starting point. And again, thanks to the University of London for making these available for educational purposes.
Absolutely.
This deep dive, by the way, is brought to you by Sinorbit Academy, Sri Lanka.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, drawing from the guide itself. It mentions that UK company law involves controversial choices about how best to support economic activity. Given that, how do you think company law might continue to change? And perhaps more importantly, how will you keep up with those changes as you move forward?
Good question to ponder.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. And from both of us, good luck for all of you for the exam.